Thank you for the opportunity to present to you all today. So the American Foulbrood Pest Management Plan, as you all know, was made in 1998 with the objective of reducing AFB by 10% per year. And in 2013, that objective was changed to 5% per year. If the Pest Management Plan had been achieving its objectives, the graph there shows what would have been happening for the last 20 years in terms of how American foulbrood would have been reducing. But this is what has actually happened. The Pest Management Plan hasn't achieved its targeted reductions in American foulbrood. And the cumulative effect of 20 years of not achieving targets is we now have 5 times as much American foulbrood as we could have as if we had achieved those targets every year. Furthermore, since 2015, the levels of AFB have been rising as a result of industry expansion, and that uptick there is about 15% per year growth in the levels of AFB. So I'd put to you that we need to act now to prevent the level of AFB from rising to levels that were last seen in the 20th century. So why has this happened? Why has the Pest Management Plan not delivered a 10% reduction in AFB each year and 5% since 2013? Quite simply, the Pest Management Plan that was proposed back in 1998 has never been fully implemented due to insufficient funding. Over the last 6 months, the management agency has taken a closer look at the Pest Management Plan and concluded that our plan rules are largely fit for purpose. The key problem is the management agency hasn't had the funding required to fully implement the Pest Management Plan. The management agency has reached this conclusion by reviewing the control strategy against the 4 key principles of national disease control. To have an effective national disease control program, you only need to do 4 things. Firstly, you need to define where all of the susceptible species are, as this determines where your target disease may or may not be present. Secondly, you need to have an effective surveillance program so that you know where the disease is and is not. Of course, once you find the disease, you need to eliminate it once found. And it's also a good idea to have controls in place to reduce the spread of undetected disease before you actually detected it. So how does the Pest Management Plan measure up? The current Apiary registration program is largely based on voluntary compliance by individual beekeepers, as the management agency doesn't have the resources to implement a robust Apiary registration compliance program. 3 helicopter surveys have found that 20%, 47% and 48% of apiaries in the areas targeted were unregistered. Funding for a robust Apiary registration compliance program is required to achieve substantial reductions in the levels of unregistered apiaries. The current surveillance program is overly dependent on self-reporting of AFB by individual beekeepers. The bad news is there is no published evidence anywhere in the world of an effective national disease control program that is reliant on self-reporting of disease by farmers or beekeepers as what the American Foulbrood Pest Management Plan. All successful national control programs make a substantial investment in surveillance that is conducted independently of the farmer or the beekeeper, as this is critical to enabling transparent and consistent disease control decisions to be made. Additional levy funding will enable the management agency to increase the number of apiaries inspected by AP2s to go from 2% up to 10%. And we are also proposing that we collect 2,000 honey samples a year. This will give us a better understanding of which beekeepers are and aren't likely to have AFB in their operation, and we can target our apiary inspections more effectively. Increased surveillance information will also enable the management agency to make more transparent and consistent decisions. It's important that the management agency response is both proportional and appropriate. We will achieve much better AFB elimination outcomes if we provide willing beekeepers with the knowledge and information they need to control AFB, rather than throwing the book at them and using the full force of the regulatory tools available. And of course, when you provide targeted advice, you need to follow it up with additional inspections and audits to ensure that improved AFB elimination outcomes are actually occurring. Unfortunately, there will be a small number of beekeepers that are unwilling to improve their AFB practices, and additional levy funding is required to enable the management agency to consistently apply the regulatory tools that are available, including directing beekeepers to comply with plan rules, and this includes complying with their DECA and acting on default where appropriate. Moving on to elimination. The current practice of burning hives is a really effective method of eliminating AFB. Additional levy funding will enable the management agency to monitor and audit beekeeper elimination performance. Additional levy funding will also enable the management agency to augment the availability of advisory and extension services to prevent AFB. Preventing the spread of AFB is most effectively done by the management practices individual beekeepers apply to how you manage your operation, and we want to provide you with additional support to do that better. We also intend to start serving restricted place notices where the beekeeping practice is not sufficient to mitigate the risk to other apiaries. Please note that we only intend to use them in exceptional cases, as restricted place notices can have quite a large adverse impact on a beekeeping operation, so we only plan to use them where absolutely necessary. Additional levy funding is also required for cross-program support. The single biggest item here is upgrading, or should I say replacing Apiary and the Apiary database. I know that many of you are frustrated as you use Apiary to update your apiaries and file your ADRs. I can assure you that I feel your pain. I am on the other side of the fence trying to extract information out of the Apiary database to improve the way the pest management plan operates, and I can only describe that as a very challenging process. The pest management plan is due for review in 2023. This is an expensive undertaking and is estimated to cost $250,000. And finally, it's important that we invest in AFB research so that we've got access to improved tools and techniques in the future. Up on the screen here, we've got a summary investment table about how the management agency proposes to spend the additional funding. Things you should note is we're proposing to spend 70% of the new funding on surveillance. This is because knowing where AFB is and is not is critical to operating an effective AFB elimination program. 14% of the funding is targeted to go towards an apiary registration compliance program, as we need to know where the apiaries are to conduct effective surveillance. And a replacement for ApiWeb to be funded from the cross-program support. to enable beekeepers and the management agency to spend more time managing AFB and less time struggling with frustrating data administration and reporting. Funding the full implementation of the pest management plan, we estimate it will save 41,000 hives and associated products over a 10-year period worth approximately $50 million, and will protect access to export markets currently worth $329 million per year. But what do these benefits look like at an individual beekeeper level? The table, which is up on the screen there, describes the maximum increase in levy for beekeepers with varying sized operations. The column on the far right-hand side describes the minimum number of hives that you need to save to break even or cover the cost of the increased levy. So if you're a hobbyist, you need to save one hive every 22 years to break even. If you're a large commercial beekeeper with 146 apiaries, you need to save 4.2 hives per year from AFB to be breaking even on this proposal. This analysis does not include the cost of labour to destroy infected hives or the cost of the additional inspections you'll need to do to prevent a small outbreak of AFB in your apiaries from becoming a large outbreak. If these costs had have been included in the analysis, the break-even number of hives would be much smaller than what I've put on the slide. And potentially more importantly, full implementation of the pest management plan will enable beekeepers that take responsibility for eliminating AFB from their beehives to have confidence that the risk of reinfection from neighbouring beehives has been dramatically reduced. In terms of next steps, the management agency wants to hear your views on the proposal to fully implement the pest management plan. Going out today, we will be sending an email to all beekeepers with the consultation pack and the proposal in full. Those beekeepers that aren't in on email, consultation pack should be arriving in the mail from today onwards. I'll be available at the stand, and we want to hear your views on where you see additional investment in the pest management plan is required. In the 8 months that I've been working on the job, I've had a constant flow of phone calls which says the management agency isn't doing this, the management agency isn't doing that, you should be doing more of this. And by and large, I actually agree with you. Most of the suggestions that have been made to me, either in person or over the phone, are actually things that the management agency could and should be doing to reduce the risk of reinfestation from neighbouring hives into your hives. However, we can't do it on our existing funding streams. We need additional funding so that we can do a better job. And I would encourage you, if you've got questions, come and see us at the stand, which is out the front. Please submit your questions to the info@afb.org.nz email address. What I will be doing is compiling those questions and sending answers to those questions to all beekeepers every week. And also, we'd ask that you make online submissions by the 10th of August. It's really important to hear your views. As I'm sure you all know, we can do better, and we need your views on what better looks like, and the consultation pack's got more detail than what I've put on the slides, but these slides will be available. The management agency will be considering submissions in September prior to making a recommendation to the Minister for Biosecurity. If you're wondering why the timeline is quite compressed. It's because AFB is increasing on average at about 15% per year. We can't afford to go slow and let it continue to increase at that rate, and we're wanting to implement the changes that I've described for next season. So that's starting June 2019. So the timeline is fairly tight.